Hey everyone, welcome to Business Unchained, where entrepreneurs and business owners come together to power up on their journey to greatness.
Bobby Masha is the founder and CEO of Greenridge Wealth Planning. All opinions expressed by Bobby and his guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinion of Greenridge Wealth Planning. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for any financial decisions. Clients of Greenridge Wealth Planning may maintain positions in any securities discussed in this podcast.
All right, guys, our guest left Wall Street to attend Harvard University for MBA in marketing. She then went on to climb the corporate ladder at Coca-Cola, where she worked directly under the global CMO. After departing from Coke, she was the head of 3 major startups, 2 of them that went public and the third that had a successful acquisition. I mean, what an impressive resume. It goes well beyond what I have here. But what I love is the story on how she unshackled herself from the business that she started, which we're going to get to unpack together in this episode. You know, this podcast is for business owners, their pursuit to be unshackled from their business, so they have a business that runs itself, not them and their time. And while I believe that the prescription to this is a cocktail of a few different remedies, marketing is most definitely one of those remedies. So I'd like to welcome today Paige Arnof-Fenn. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Bobby, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Me too. Mavens and Moguls. This is our CEO here, our founder. What I'm hoping to learn today from you, because I love to have this conversation and give a little bit of a framework on how this can unfold. But I want to hear a little bit about what you think in terms of marketing sales. I think a lot of companies, they try to figure out their marketing strategy and they always feel like maybe they're still missing something. So, you know, I double majored at Lehigh, marketing and finance. And I've always found that as, interesting as the analytical component of it is, it really is just a social experiment, because you could have the same branding strategy for, let's say, a Coke, go out and mimic it for Pepsi and have different results based upon branding and how people view your company and the emotional experience that they have. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, your pearls of wisdom around marketing your company and creating a brand. But I also want to talk about, you call yourself the accidental entrepreneur. And I want to learn a little bit about what's been the hardest part for you in becoming an entrepreneur and what your general thoughts, beliefs, philosophy is on entrepreneurialism. And if you prescribe to any general thoughts or beliefs, or you basically are working off of experience, those are the 2 things that I would love to hit in this time together. What, from your perspective, do you want to add to that list?
Well, that's going to be a pretty meaty conversation, and we'll just see where it goes. How's that?
All right. So where do you want to start?
So I had a professor in business school who used to say, marketing is everything and everything is marketing. And when he said that, I used to giggle because I thought, what is he talking about? But I think the longer I've been doing it and the more I've been at it, I think he was absolutely right. Like you said, marketing can be the difference between success and failure. The tagline of my company is because marketing matters. And I really think marketing can be the difference between success and failure. But it really comes down to being an authentic brand, saying what you mean, meaning what you say, standing for something, owning real estate in your consumer or your customer's brain, so that every time they have a problem that your product or service can fix, that they think of you first. And when they know people who have problems that you can solve, that they think of you and recommend you and refer you. So if you own that real estate in their brain, that's gold.
What was super interesting was I was having a conversation this afternoon, or this morning rather, with it's almost like a mastermind group that we have. And one of the things that the one gentleman had said is, I'm not even trying to bring in business, and it's coming in at a pace that we just don't even know how to keep up. And we hired a marketing company, and the marketing company is out there doing their thing, but just the amount of referrals that we're getting is insane. And I think I might just turn off the marketing. And I said, whoa, hit the brakes, stop. Don't even go down now that road, because you're looking at the low-hanging fruit right now in the terms of opportunity. But if you turn off the marketing, which is your future growth, you can't turn off the future growth to because to focus on the current growth. Like the future, like that just allows you to be a little bit more selective. Do you see, am I talking the right language here?
Yeah, I mean, what I always say is it's rarely too early to start marketing, and it can often be too late. And if you have a formula that works and the referrals are kicking in and the marketing, the messaging is out there and people are internalizing it, they're emotionally connected to your brand and you're really living in that zone, that's where the magic happens. That's where you have the special sauce. The trouble is when everything's working and you're being really successful, people often don't understand what it is that's making them successful. You get a little lazy or a little cocky because it's like, wow, we're just firing on all cylinders. We're batting 1,000. Everything's working. And you don't really take the time to kind of take a step back, analyze what's really working. Is it, the tide rises and all the boats rise with it? Are you just experiencing this, boom and you're just benefiting from it? The thing is, when things are not going well,
That's
when
when
it's a
everyone
bit
wants to throw everything at the wall and hope it all sticks.
exactly, but that's when you actually learn what's working and what's not working. Because in those desperate, scary times, people often hit the pause button, really analyze the data, take a step back, and look at we tried this and this didn't work. Why didn't it work? Let's kick the tires. Let's look under the hood. Let's do the homework. And that's when you really learn the hard won lessons. That's where those battle axe scars, come from, because you never forget those lessons. When things blow up and everything's kind of on fire, that's where you really understand, okay, we need to do more of this and less of that. Or every time we do this, something bad happens. Let's try and turn up the volume here and turn down the volume there. So, it can be tempting to say, turn off the marketing, let's just keep getting referrals, or,
Yeah.
let's just keep whatever's coming in over the transom. The problem is if that stops happening, then you've got no pipeline, you've got no learnings, you've got no analytics of, what was going on that was going well. I think it's important for your buddy in the mastermind group to really talk to that marketing agency and see if you can test and learn what specifically is working and why it's working. Don't throw
So
the baby out with the bathwater.
yeah, that is, I mean, and that's where the art and the science come into play. When you talk about the analytics, it's really being able to gauge not what is going to work, but what's working. Because you can read what's working. It's harder to anticipate based on experience what is going to work. One of the questions that I have, just, we are constantly talking about in my business, we're constantly talking about with business owners, their exit strategy. And not everybody wants the bigger and badder business to where marketing is going to help them to grow. Some people just want to really focus in on a key client type or be able to kind of pick and choose and not have to take the next person that comes in because they're just looking for volume. What are some of the things that or exercises that you go through with prospective clients or clients that sign up with you? What are some of the things that you want them to start thinking about early on in the process as they start to formulate in their mind what they want their marketing to look like?
So, a lot of times it depends on the structure of the organization. Are they venture backed? Do they have friends and family money? Are they self funded? Because depending on where the money comes from, you may have more or less control on what your future looks like. They always say smart money is better than dumb money, which is better than no money. And you need some money to get going. But depending on where your funding comes from, you may have more or less control of your future than you'd like. I self-funded my business, but the 3 startups that I ran marketing for were all venture-backed, private equity-backed startups. So I didn't have that much control over those businesses. I knew that those investors needed a big exit. And, as you said, 2 of them went public and were sold, and one of them was just sold to a private business. but nobody asked my opinion. I wasn't a decision maker. With Mavens and Moguls, I own the company 100%. So I don't have to take on work that's growth for growth's sake, because the buck really does stop with me. With those other businesses, we were trying to grow very aggressively because our board, our advisors, our investors wanted to see a return on investment in a set amount of time. And so we were looking at things in a very strategic and opportunistic way to take advantage of whatever momentum we could get.
Now, do you see that most of your clients tend to fall down that alleyway of venture backed, looking for huge growth, very concise, very analytical, put the money in to get a excessive rate of return, really looking for these success metrics? Or do you find your clients to be more middle market, still working on branding, still looking on tweaking some of those metrics, still trying to understand where they fit in the market? Where do you find yourself really playing? Where's your playground?
So we play in all sandboxes, to be brutally honest. We work with pre-revenue venture-backed startups. We work with mid-market, emerging market firms, kind of 2 million to 200 million. We work with the Fortune 500. We work with nonprofits. And private companies that are self-funded or friends and family. The majority of our clients are those venture-backed, private equity-backed startups.
So do you have a playbook that you work from, or what's kind of like new client comes on board, venture backed? What are the first tools that you're kind of you're jumping into your quiver and you're grabbing those first arrows? What do they look like?
So it depends on what they've done before they brought us in. Have they done the market research? What do they know? What do they know about their own business, their competition? Sometimes they don't have a logo, they don't have a tagline, they don't have a website.
So they're starting from blank page, blank canvas. You're coming in with your whole palette of paints to figure out what's the color combo that you want to put together.
Absolutely. And, if we learned anything over the last 4 years with COVID, if you don't exist online, you don't exist today. So if they don't have a web presence, if there's no online marketing that's happening, you got to start there. You got to put a stake in the ground so that, when people are looking for them, if you Google the company or the leadership team, they better pop up. And because if they don't find anything, nobody's going to return your calls. Nobody's going to want to have meetings with you. So
I was just going to say that's super interesting, because most people think of online presence and they stop at their website, but it's when they Google you, your company, how many other places are you popping up to show that verification that you exist, you're real, there's credibility, there's some history and track record to what it is you're doing.
Yeah, it's called social proof. Are people talking about you? Do you have products or services that are competitive? Who are your competitors? Where do you play? How do you play? And are you any good? And, think about your business, my business. Before you return a phone call, decide if you want to have a meeting with someone, you check them out online. And, with LinkedIn in a professional service business like yours or mine, there's a very high likelihood that whoever's trying to get together with us is someone, even if we don't know them directly, we know them indirectly. We have a lot of contacts in common, and we can do a little back channel analysis and say, is this guy any good? Is she smart? And if the word comes back, oh my God, that person is a real jerk, or, he really screwed me on a deal, or that guy doesn't know anything. Are you really going to follow up with that person? Do you really want to have a meeting with them? Do you want to get into a partnership or relationship with them? Absolutely not. So you got to clean up well online. You got to pass the sniff test. Does this person, are they real? Do they exist? And do they clean up well?
Now, do you find that when people are engaging you, they are seeing some of your videos? And I think a lot of the things that I do online, I do it with the intent of, I want people, when they first meet me, to feel like they already know me.
I'm exactly the same. Exactly the same. Like, by the time people have, somebody they trust or somebody recommended us to them. And so they go to your website, they go to my website, they Google us, and there's a lot of content. There are a lot of stuff out there on you and me. So in a perfect world, they do their homework. They listen to some of your videos, they read some of your articles, they check you out through the back channel on LinkedIn, and they basically are doing due diligence on whether or not they're going to want to work with you. So by the time you actually connect with them, by that first phone call, by that first cup of coffee, by that first meeting, they basically decided, this is someone I want to get to know more. I like what I've seen so far. Now I want to, really pressure test this relationship. So the good news is by the time you get to the actual meeting, it's your game to lose. You've passed all the hurdles and they know that you're real, that you're smart. They like your sense of humor. And actually, if they go through their process and they don't like the way you think and they don't agree with the way, you've talked,
You don't
that's
even
a
get the
blessing.
meeting.
But that's a blessing too, because you've gotten to know really quickly that this is not going to be a good fit. You don't need to waste time with tire kickers who are not going to be good clients and customers for you anyway. So for me, I love it when people do their homework online. And by the time we talk, they've heard some of my stories, they've seen me in a bunch of situations, and they go, yeah, we could really use someone like this. This is the kind of chemistry. This is going to be a good fit for my organization. I think that's a blessing when it happens.
So I find that super interesting. And what I'd love to hear a little bit is as you start to think about your social presence and how you put yourself out there, right? The marketing that you do, that let's call it the pre-interviewing stage, so to speak. What are maybe 3 things, 2, 3, 4 things that you want your either reader or listener or viewer to walk away with to say, she's the one?
So, I kind of put it all out there. I grew up in the Deep South. I'm really a Southerner at heart, even though I've lived on the East Coast and the West Coast for a long time. And I've written a lot about how manners matter. My default is to kind of kill people with kindness. That's just the way I was raised. You write thank you notes. When you tell someone you're going to get back to them by Friday, you actually do. You never underpromise. You always want to deliver on your promises. You never want to be in a situation where you promise a client something and you drop the ball. I think I want people to know that like what you see is what you get. And I appreciate kind of straight shooters. I give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think if that does, if people kind of roll their eyes or think like that person, they get railroaded because people are going to take advantage of them or something. I don't want to work with people like that. So I want people to think I'm really good at what I do. They can see from my history and my track record that I've got the data to back it up, that I really know what I'm talking about. I've invested a lot of time and a lot of energy into a career that I truly enjoy and that I like having fun. I like working with people that I really like as people. The ends don't justify the means. Like I want people who kind of want to be in the trenches and that believe marketing matters. I mean, like I said, that's my tagline. And I don't want people that think of marketing as like a necessary evil. Like they don't believe in it. They don't like it. They think it's fake. They think, that's not going to be a good fit for me. Well, I think if you check me out online, you're going to see a consistent story and a consistent message and a brand that you can trust. And I think where people kind of screw up sometimes is they try to be one image on one social media platform, a different image on a different platform. And depending on kind of which video you click on or which article you read, it's very inconsistent and confusing. And, a brand is building a relationship with someone you need to trust. And I want to be that trusted partner.
Yeah. And I think that, when we start to talk about the self-managed business, that business that you can step away from, when you have the marketing in place that's building your brand, that's actually pulling people to you instead of you pushing out information and trying to get people, it's actually pulling people to you. That gives you the freedom to walk away and say, I can establish a team now to start to develop or handle the business, whether you're selling widgets or you're selling a service or, wherever your business is, you need more than likely somebody to purchase or be a client of yours. That's where it becomes a huge component. So when people are saying, mumbo jumbo, it's witchcraft, I don't believe in it. It's almost, well, how hard do you want to work then? And I look at that as being a necessary part of your mindset. If you're going to be building a business, you're going to have to understand, like, well, how do you want your brand to be put out to other people? How do you want them to start to think about you and have an emotional attachment so
Right.
they use you?
How do you want them to think? How do you want them to feel when they interact with your brand? And your team is a reflection of you. And as I said, meeting your team, they were terrific. I know you've got high standards. You train your people well. They know you. They know what you're looking for. That tells you a lot about somebody and how they run their business. If the people around them are kind of like putting out fires and chasing their tails and not very nice to each other and not very upbeat or positive, and they're running late and they're always cutting each other off, is that the kind of partner you want to work with? Probably not.
Well, people's everything, unless you're a one-man show, and then you're never going to find that self-managing business because you're the only person there to manage it.
Bingo.
So you call yourself the accident or call your situation the accidental entrepreneur. You got to go through that with me because I know there's a story behind it. And I think that it comes better out of your mouth than me trying to, to give my own iteration of it. Please.
All right. So when I was a kid growing up, I grew up in a family with business people. My dad and both grandfathers were commercial bankers. And I always thought I would go into business. My dad got an MBA. I wanted to follow in his footsteps. So I always thought I was kind of a corporate kind of, CEO in the making, because I always used to kind of resemble my dad and my grandfathers. I was a little bit of a chip off their block. And so when I was a little girl and, my parents' friends would be like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Do you want to be a nurse or a teacher or a mommy? And I'd put my hands on my hips and say, no, I want to go get an MBA at Harvard and go run a bank just like my dad and my grandfathers. And I would say this from like age 2. I was really kind of convinced that that was my path. And my first job out of college in the 80s, I went to Wall Street for 2 years. I was one of those people that got hooked watching Michael Douglas win the Oscar for the first Wall Street movie in the 80s. And I thought Gordon Gekko. I was all over that. And I realized pretty quickly I was good at the work, but I didn't love the whole package. So I went back to get an MBA, and my whole intention was to kind of rebrand myself. I decided I needed to get out of finance, even though I was an econ major in college, and I needed to find a path that was a little more balanced. I didn't want to just be analytical. I wanted to use both my left brain and my right brain and use creativity and numbers to have a more interesting career path. And I got a summer internship in marketing at Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati at their headquarters. And I've been in marketing ever since. But I loved working for like a big Fortune 500 company. So then my new decision was,
well, it came with a really big budget, right? I'm sure there were a lot of fun things that happened, behind the scenes when you're dealing with big money, but big money budgets in advertising, right?
These are, multi-million-dollar brands, very established brands. P&G, every category they compete in, they are number one or sometimes number one and number two in the category. So yeah, you've got big budgets. P&G sponsors the Olympics. These are brands that can afford Super Bowl ads. I loved being in that kind of consumer products world of big brands, well-known names, big budgets. And so then I thought, I could be the next Meg Whitman, I want to run a Fortune 500 company. I want to work on a big brand with big budgets, global footprint, and that was going to be my path. And I left P&G and I ended up at Coca-Cola as the number 2 person in marketing at Coke. Coke's the most recognized brand in the world. And that was just like, okay, I am living my dream. And then at that point, it's like the mid to late 90s. And the internet was starting to take off. And I just could not, it was like the shiny object. I couldn't stop looking at all these .coms that were raising tens of millions of dollars and, doing things in a really scrappy way. So I ended up leaving my big corporate job at Coke, moving to Los Angeles and heading up marketing at a startup in the music and entertainment space. And less than 2 years later, we went public and we were sold to Yahoo. So that was like crazy, super fun. Fasten your seatbelt. Every day was just like a roller coaster.
And Yahoo was a big acquirer in those days.
Very big. So, I was in the prospectus, one of the top 5 shareholders. It was just magic. I got hooked. I was bitten by the .com bug and I was not going back to corporate. So then my husband got a job on the East Coast. We moved back to Boston. We had both been students here years before. And I did another startup as the head of marketing. And then it got sold to the largest privately held media company in the world. And what people don't realize is going public is kind of sexy, but when you're an insider, you're not allowed to sell your stock for 6 months. So even though the stock initially went really high, by the time I could sell the stock, it wasn't worth as much. But when a private company buys you, they cut you a check at closing, and that check can go right into the bank. So I made a lot more money with the second one than I did with the first. Not sexy, not glamorous, but very lucrative. Then I did another startup as the head of marketing, and we went public and then sold to a public company again. So, I got lucky. I had 3 startups and 3 base hits. I made a little money 3 times. But right about the time of the third startup exiting, 9/11 hit. And 9/11 was a real shock to the economy. The stock market tanked. All the businesses decided they better conserve their cash because nobody knew if they were going to be able to raise money again. So everybody cut their marketing department, laid off marketers, and stopped spending money. And they wanted to conserve cash because they didn't know how long this uncertainty was going to last. And I was only in my early 30s at that point. So I definitely had no interest in retiring. I was having too much fun, but there weren't any marketing jobs. Everybody had just fired their marketing department. So because I had been the head of marketing at 3 successful companies with venture-backed with all the VCs and private equity guys, as soon as things shut down, I started getting contacted by all these people that I knew saying, hey, I've got portfolio companies that really need your help. Can we talk? And my instinct was like, I'm not really a consultant. I'm the
I was going to say,
client.
with those they wanted gig jobs. They wanted to give you gig jobs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this was before there was a gig economy, certainly not the way it is now. And my husband was saying, Paige, these people know you, they trust you, they like you, you made the money before. What's the harm? Just call them back, have a meeting, see where it goes. So every one of these meetings, I thought like, well, I know what to do, but I can't take on all this work myself. So my husband says, call your friends. You know all these great marketing people. So I called my favorite marketing people from earlier in my career, from my corporate days, from my startup days. Everybody had just been laid off. Like everyone was available. I had people, I had projects, and I just started putting them together. So a buddy of mine from college wanted to learn how to do web programming. She did the coding for my first website. I wrote the copy. I had people all over the world who I had worked with who were available. And we just started forming teams and helping clients on what they needed help on. I called the women the marketing mavens, the guys the marketing moguls. For short, I called them Mavens and Moguls. I did a concept test on the name. I tested a lot of serious names, but Mavens and Moguls came back as a clear winner. And we hung out a shingle, turned on the website, and we were in business.
I think it makes you want to open up the website. It makes you want to go and say, what is this about? It's very intriguing name.
No, and it's a conversation starter. People are always, how did you get the name? What does it mean? I love your name. And that's what you need as a conversation starter. Because once people get into a dialogue, then, you've got them hooked. Now you can, say, well, how are things going for you? Tell me about your marketing. What do you do? What's working? What's not working? And they just love telling you all the good, bad, and ugly. And now you're in the thick of a conversation, and then I know I can help them, and I can introduce them to great people. And here we are, 22 years later.
You had like a coming together of a bad situation with a lot of people who were highly qualified. You had connections. You wrangle them together in this bullpen, and you say, "Hey, listen, we're going to go after it. And we're going to get it." And off started your business.
And there was no business plan. Like I never. When I was in business school, I never said, I want to hang out a shingle and start my own company. That was never on the radar. That was never my intention. I wanted to be Meg Whitman. I wanted, to run.
Well, you've been practicing since you were 6.
Exactly.
Blue suit, white shirt. You were ready to go.
You got it. No, absolutely. But, it was the Wild West of the internet, 1.0. And if you had a storefront in a website, you existed. And all the people that I reconnected with, they were all in. They said, this looks fun. I love working with cool people. I love solving, marketing problems. So I had people and projects, and I just started putting them together.
It actually sounds like I kind of wish I was part of that crew at first, like you want to get that phone call of hey, come join the greatest minds in the industry to do some really fun stuff and consult.
Well, it's funny. So Harvard Business School ended up writing 2 cases on my company about 3 years into our kind of embarking in this adventure.
And what was the pretense behind that?
So it was basically a new model for marketing. Before us, people outsourced HR, legal, accounting, but they didn't outsource their marketing. You might hire an ad agency, but you had a marketing team in-house. But, now it makes perfect sense. We live in a world now that's like the sharing economy. People share their homes, their cars, their boats, their sporting equipment. You share everything. But 22 years ago, the concept of hiring a virtual chief marketing officer or a marketing team that's not physically located in your office,
it just didn't exist.
It didn't exist. So
we didn't have a work from home economy either. There was no Zoom. There was no way to really connect everybody. So that was breaking a mold.
So we were kind of a pioneer in this space. And it's funny to me now, people say, oh, we were like the Mavens and Moguls of my industry. And it's like funny to me that I think, wow, we were really early on in this whole, new chapter of business. But when I was in business school, the cases were on Xerox and IBM and General Motors, big established companies. You didn't do cases on a company like mine. But like you said, the world has changed a lot. I got my MBA in 1991. That was 3 lifetimes ago. Now people do go to business school with the intention of starting their own firms. And so now this is something that MBAs aspire to. They want to run their own businesses. They want to set up their own rules. They want to work virtually or hybrid. And you can do that now. If you can dream it and think it, you can make it happen.
So what are some of the things that you just weren't anticipating getting into your own business, now having a lot of people with opinions? Obviously you're 100% owner, but you're still dealing with creatives and opinions. What were some of the major things that you just didn't anticipate that you had to work through to find success?
So, I always tell people I never was scared about failing. It just didn't dawn on me that we were going to fail. I knew I was going to figure out a way to keep the trains moving. But you have to be worried a little bit more about success than failure, because when things are really, scaling aggressively, that's when things can get a little crazy and you're not necessarily prepared for kind of, growing by leaps and bounds. From year 1 to year 2, we quadrupled, then we tripled, then we doubled, but the base kept getting bigger. And, not everything you start with can grow at that level. And, I learned so much in those early years, both with the colleagues that I worked with and the clients that I worked with.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? I would love to hear more about what you have.
Yeah,
What your
I
experience
had
was.
a couple of early colleagues who basically were very good in those early days. They were in their comfort zone. They, could kind of control the early startup phase. But
Mhm.
as we started to grow, they got a little bit threatened or insecure in the growth trajectory, and they were much more comfortable doing the things that they always did that were always successful.
So do you
But
think that was more so yeah, that's interesting because I think that there's two questions that I have here. Is that more of a component of going back to, your MBA case studies where there are certain CEOs that are great in a startup, then you go to the next stage that you may need somebody different. You go to the next stage, it may require somebody different to take you through each stage of growth. Now that's a skill set. But on the other side, it's a mentality of I am somebody that is a big fish in a small pond. The pond's growing. I am proportionally not growing. And that is almost a fear of losing your voice, your sense of importance. It's also could be an ego crush. Where do
exactly.
you feel that was for them? Was it a mix of both or what? Because they sound like capable people, but was it their capability was stretched or was it really they were comfortable in their little fishbowl and they
I
wanted
think
to
it was
keep that environment?
a little bit of both, but I think culturally, chemistry wise, there are people that believe life is a zero sum game, and there are people that have a natural growth mindset. And what I realized as we were growing, I needed the people with the growth mindset to stick with me so that as we experiment and learn and grow, we're going to get out of our comfort zone and we're going to figure out how to keep moving forward and how to keep learning and growing. The zero sum game mentality is like if you're winning, it means I'm losing. And those people were watching other people kind of pivot and grow and learn, and they were getting more insecure and feeling left behind. And that just doesn't work with, 18 people want to work with 18 people. They want to be with the stars. And if people feel threatened or insecure, that is just like, a turd in a punch bowl. Like nobody really, you know, you don't want to be hanging out with those people. That ends up kind of spoiling the energy and it kind of drags people down. So even though my personal bias is to give people the benefit of the doubt and to kind of, have people that, I want to be loyal to the people that I started with, it was really better for everyone when we shook hands and parted ways and they went their way and the team that was with me continued to push boundaries, get out of their comfort zone, fasten their seatbelt and, get into the next gear to move forward. So
It's tough because some people who are in that mindset just can't get out of it. And,
exactly.
going back to, working with business owners and talking about their general financial plan, their exit strategy, how they're going to make their business something that they're going to say, all right, if somebody comes with a check and writes a number on it, I know if that's enough. And sometimes you have to get out of that zero sum game mindset and you have to say, all right, instead of thinking of this as a cost, what do I need to do in order to make this a return on my investment? So it's not just mentally, oh, it goes to the expense column, but you have to get 4 more clients. You have to sell X amount of units. You have to, and you just think about what you need to do from an abundance mindset to overcompensate for the things that you're maybe spending or giving to other employees in the sense of benefits. Because even with that, bonuses, raises, people kind of go, well, I'm not paying any more money. Do they earn it? Do they deserve it? And if they do, how do you put them in a position where you're also becoming a fruit of that labor, of their labor,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. And it works with your clients too. I realized early on we had clients that were not growing with us either. And, you got to, especially if you're self funded and, you built this great, cohesive, smart team with a growth mindset, you want clients who are just as great as the team so that you can thrive together. And we had a client early on who was kind of a jerk. And the more successful we were making him, the bigger jerk he became. And again, we had to shake hands and part ways
A
because
jerk in what sense of the word? What was
so
the
we were
the
doing
profile?
PR. We were doing PR for him, and we were getting him some fantastic media hits. And the more he saw his name in print, the more he was believing his press. And I
Ah,
feel
the ego, the self-importance. We like that.
yeah. And it got really dicey because it became brutally obvious about 3 months into the engagement. He signed a $10,000 a month retainer for a year, which is a great client when you're a brand new business. I didn't have a lot of six-figure clients at the very beginning, but he basically was slow to pay us. And his favorite media hit, we were getting him national print, national coverage on broadcast. His favorite thing that we got him was a local free newspaper in his small town in the suburbs that did a puff piece on him. And he was so pleased that every time he went to the dry cleaner or the grocery,
They knew who
people
he was.
recognized him from the free local thing. And I just thought, what about the Wall Street Journal? What about the New York Times? What about,
But that's also a lesson to be learned too, because you kind of set your expectations up front. What's going to make this a successful outcome for you?
exact
And maybe that's, we were talking about people who are the big fish in the small pond. Some people just want to continue to grow the size of their, themselves, but they don't want to grow their pond.
Exactly. And so I think just being, again, an authentic brand, knowing what makes you happy, knowing what your definition of success is, so that, you're building your business with the kind of people, both colleagues and clients, customers, that you want to be in the trenches with, that you want to help be successful. Because when it's your name on the door, when it's, when the buck stops with you, you're the only one that you can blame if you're doing it any other way. So those were really important lessons for me to learn early on.
So I want to be super conscious of our time together. I try to keep these things under an hour, and we're already about
I,
3/4 of the way
I
there.
was going to say, I have another call in about 5 minutes. I'm so sorry. I could talk to you forever.
All right, so let's hit this up in 5 minutes. We talked a little bit about social media presence and internet presence as being one of the important things, and thinking of yourself as the maven of media as well as an owner of your own business. What are some of the things that you would advise to some of the people who are listening here, right? We're thinking about what are the top things that are going on in your mind when you say, I'm going to help a client, or whether it's directing them on self-ownership or direct them in for marketing. These are the top 3 to 5 things that they should really be thinking about.
So everybody's a brand today. You might not think of yourself as a brand. You do not need to be Taylor Swift or Beyonce or LeBron James to be a brand. Everyone with the social media platforms, you're a brand, I'm a brand. And so
You're saying beyond their company, your person is a brand.
Absolutely. And if you with your business or me with my business are so associated with those companies, your brand is linked to your corporate brand, your company brand as well. So again, we talked about this a little bit before, but you have to be very deliberate with the brand that you want to build. You need to be consistent online and offline, living the brand every day, and make sure it's authentic to you. It's consistency and it's repetition. You can't stand for 10 things. What are the 1 or 2 at most 3 things you want to stand for and be known for? So for sure, that is very high on the list. The other thing is you got to do your homework. I wish there was a shortcut to success. In my experience, there are no shortcuts. There are lots of detours. There are a lot of ways that you're going to kind of pivot and learn and grow. but you got to learn the basics and you got to pay your dues and you got to do your homework. Nothing worth, if you win an Oscar, a Grammy, an Olympic gold medal, that is not an overnight success story. Those are people that learned their craft and paid their dues and did it for a long time. There is no such.
One of the most interesting things that I still keep to this day is when I first got back into this business, and I had a mentor of mine who said, you're spending a lot of time in the books. What are you looking for? And I said, I really need to become an expert in my craft. I can't just be and continue to go out there unless I really have that self-confidence. And that's how I get my self-confidence. And he said to me, Bobby, there are a lot of people who are in this industry for 20 years. They just have 1 year experience 20 times over. You keep going at the rate you're going. When you get to 20 years, you're going to have a real 20-year experience. There's going to be something different about you. And I think that that's kind of what you're talking about, right? There's no shortcuts. Experience, time, putting it in, being an expert at what you do, who you're talking to, doing the research. That's all great information that a lot of people, they think that there's a shortcut these days because everything is so easily accessible. And we are in this like want economy and not a needs-based economy.
Definitely. And then I guess my last point is, now that we're living in the world of artificial intelligence and robots, I would say, don't be threatened by the robots, because more than ever, I think being the human connection, showing your humanity, connecting with people on a human level is really, that cannot be copied by a robot. So I would tell people, find what it is, the emotional connection that you have with your audience, with your prospects, and really leverage that, because, the artificial intelligence and robots can help you with a lot of things that are monotonous and things that are highly repetitive, but you can't outsource the human connection to a robot. And technology is great, but it's never going to be replaced by human connection. So I would just suggest that everybody really stay as human as you can to stand out from your competition, who may be kind of bottom fishing to, turn into a commodity. The way that these robots talk, it doesn't sound human. You can really tell who brings their personality to their business.
But even sometimes those softer touches that robots just cannot, AI cannot replicate. And that's super important. Well, listen, I loved having you on. I really appreciate you and your time. How do people find you? Before we get off, I want to make sure that, if somebody says, I need to learn more about Paige, they can find you. Where is that?
Mavensandmoguls.com, MAVENSANDMOGULS.com, or LinkedIn, Paige Arnof-Fenn, all one word, no hyphen.
And we'll have that all in the notes below as well.
Thank you so much, Bobby. This has been awesome. I've loved chatting with you today.
I love chatting with you also, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Episode 13.